Well, hello, everyone. This is Wilson Cole, president of Adams, Evans, and Ross and Backdoor Hiring Solutions. And I am joined with our general counsel and lead attorney and my lovely daughter, Samantha. How are you doing, Samantha?
Doing great. How are you doing?
Doing fine. I know we are kind of rushing in on this because on Wednesday you head in one direction down to Florida to speak at a conference, and I am flying out with one of your sisters to see clients out in LA. So we're kind of sneaking this in. But this particular, this is part of our series on the top excuses for backdoor hires. And we are going to do, and by the way, if you want your free copy of backdoor hires, shoot me an email and I will shoot you a link. It's literally, you pay shipping costs. It's like $6-7 for shipping costs. And we'll send it out, but I'll give you the book for free. But we are now in the discussion of number 5 and number 6 on the number 5 and the number 6 excuse that we hear whenever somebody turns over a backdoor hire to us and we reach out to them. They don't go, "Oh my God, I'm such a thief. You've caught me. Here's a check. Go away." Occasionally they do, but not often. They give us excuses, and as we've gone through these excuses, we've kind of walked you through from a collection standpoint, practicality standpoint, and then we have Samantha kind of give her legal spin on it if it elevates up over to the legal side. But the number 5 excuse is we hired the candidate, but they did not last the 90 days. Now, in your agreement, I hope to God that you have our guarantee is contingent upon the payment being made in a timely manner. And I understand that if you have a great client and they send something in, if they say, "Gee, it has to be here in 10 days for the guarantee to be valid," Sam may disagree with me because it modifies the. But if it comes in on the 14th day and they're a great client, my God, honor your guarantee if that's what you've done. That's from the intent standpoint. But what typically happens when we get them, that's not the case. The case is they didn't pay it. They had no desire to pay it. They ignored repeated invoices, the same character that they were showing to our client when they didn't pay them at 30 days, didn't pay them at 45, didn't pay them at 60. Didn't pay them at 85 days, the client or the candidate looks around and says, "Dear God, I don't need to be there." So they leave. And so at that point, the client now contacts us. We can come at it from they voided the guarantee. And even if they were to honor the guarantee, it's a replacement guarantee. Now, Samantha has had some recently here that have just, clients really took a vacation when they wrote out these contracts. Sam, kind of give your legal spin on it from that perspective.
There are some that I've seen where either it does you get a prorated fee. And I said, and this can run into, and I understand the 30, 60, 90 day billing. I don't fully agree with it, but that is its own, that can be a topic for a later date. This is when the guarantee says if the candidate doesn't last past 90 days, we will do a prorated guarantee. I especially am annoyed at the ones that don't break down. Are we prorating by the week? Are we prorating by the day? How are we prorating what they've already paid? Is there going to be a down payment? It turns into we're already dealing with somebody who's trying to be slick. Now let's throw in an accounting nightmare.
And you've given them the excuse of you have to give me some money back if they wind up leaving.
Yes. Or, if it's in collections at 45 days, how many times I've sat on the phone and, well, we don't know if we're going to keep the candidate, so why do we pay it now?
Yep.
Or, my favorite is when it's not prorated, it's a direct refund.
Yep.
Because I've seen where they just hire, and I don't even think they really ever fire the candidate, but you see this continuous loop for the same candidate.
They're
so that they can
getting
get a
free,
refund.
they're getting free staff.
I mean, it's almost, and I almost feel like it's the people who go buy a formal dress, tuck the tag, and then return it after the event.
And for those that are out there that are slightly older than me, it is, there was a rage where people would go out, instead of buying their prom dresses or whatever, they would go out and buy it, and then they'd return it after the fact, which to me, I think has its own character issues. But yes, that's probably in a very girl way, a very
You raised me. I can't.
And just for the record, we never tucked tags. We paid for those doggone dresses. So and I agree with you. I think the second that you bring in a refund, it creates a defense, because keep in mind, when that attorney, or if that debtor says, hey, send me a copy of the contract once the dispute starts, they're not getting the contract. That attorney's not getting the contract to get you paid. They're getting that contract so they can build a defense. And so we don't want to give them a ready-made defense, because let's assume that you have somebody in there and the first candidate doesn't make it, then they can start saying, well, we're going to take 3 credits on the last 2, and this one we're not going to pay you for at all. It just becomes a nightmare. Never give back money, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Sam, the fifth excuse of this riveting book, and I have to admit, this book is got some pretty cool stuff in it. When I hear this one, it tells me that they might as well have, I'm a thief, I'm a cheat, and I will take advantage of every issue that I can. The argument is, well, he presented the candidate, we weren't that interested in, but 4 months later, 2 months later, 2 weeks later, they contact me on their own. And they said they don't have any contract whatsoever. They don't want you representing them. And they contacted me on their own. Why on earth would I owe a recruiter a fee when that candidate contacted me 3 months later on their own? The problem with that is procuring cause. Our client was the nexus. Our client was the very start that, had they not made that introduction, that candidate wouldn't have had the ability to pick up the phone and give you a call. Even if they make a contact with somebody that, especially in these small industries, and we've had this discussion before, well, we already knew the candidate. If they reach out, even if you knew them after they were introduced, a fee is owed. I cannot tell you how many times we have a situation where that is one of the bigger arguments, and surprisingly, that seems to be one that we have to sue on more occasions than not. Not that we knew the candidate, but the candidate called me on their own. They were not even involved in the hiring process. Well, the fact is, they breached the contract by talking with them directly, and so we can clearly show on that. Samantha, from a legal standpoint, that's from the collection standpoint. From the legal standpoint, what's the argument?
What I always go with is, and especially if I'm dealing with another attorney, the phrasing, procuring cause is used a little bit, but it's but for the actions of my client, the candidate would have never known that there was a position here, especially if it wasn't on a job board and any of that. And also, at least when it comes into my office, because again, I see a lot of these because we do end up having to sue them and everything comes through for my review, is a lot of times we're dealing with salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
They know how to close the deal.
Yep.
So they're going to have no issue picking up the phone and selling themselves.
Yep, I agree.
And whenever I hear, well, the candidate says there wasn't a contract with your client. Well, I don't care about if the candidate has a contract with us. They're not the one paying us.
Yep.
You are. And you do have a contract with my client.
I agree. So now, just for sense of argument, procuring cause and but for there are basically their cousins. They're basically saying something very similar, or from a legal aspect, is there a slightly twist, or it's basically the same?
There's a slight difference, and also it depends what states will allow which one to come in and things along those lines. Okay. And it's kind of there's a singular, And a lot of times, and again, it gets so complicated when you go state by state, but is it a singular cause or is it multiple actions that led to it?
Okay.
And also, I love when it's they reached out to me directly when there are emails where it's a continuation of the same email. They just dropped the recruiter out of it.
Oh, 100%.
Where everybody was CC'd in an email about an interview or John, I'd like you to meet Joe, and then they just drop, and all of the emails come in, and it's like, really? You didn't think that one through? Like, you couldn't create a new email, copy and paste. I mean,
yeah, they just pick up the conversations with the form. So that is a good point. So those are two of the latest excuses. Now, at the end of the day, I'm a collection guy, but in anything that you do, you have to be a good sales guy, in my opinion, because you can be the greatest collector in the world, but if you can't sell your services. So my background initially came from sales, and so salespeople are exceptionally good at closing deals, and Sam can attest to that because her mother, which is so far beyond my reach, I was able to close the deal by using my cell. So I circumvented your mother's parents to close the deal.
And I think, 30 plus years later, they still wonder what they did wrong for that. But...
So that is a good point. Well, Sam, I appreciate you joining me on this call talking about these excuses. Next week, we're going to cover the last 3 causes. And that's going to be the end of this particular series where we're taking the top 9 excuses. If you have a backdoor hire that you're concerned about, you want to get an opinion, you can shoot me an email, wilson@aercollections.com, and we can take a look at it. And depending on the circumstances, certainly have it under legal review at no additional cost to you guys, but let you know how solid your claim is. All of these excuses become so much more enforceable if you have a signed contract, which goes back to one of the top excuses of we didn't sign anything.
I won't go on my soapbox and do the song and dance again.
I understand. It just amazes. I mean, half the collections that come through here, we don't have a signed agreement. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through that. And if you want us to work with you over in Backdoor Hiring Solutions, and locate backdoor hires, I can tell you there's a webinar that's just been released where we go through and release all the numbers, and they're absolutely staggering how many backdoor hires there are, and after 3 years, millions of records, millions of located placement fees, millions of dollars in located placement fees. We now know the industries that are most likely and the positions that are most likely. So join Samantha and I on that. She kind of gives her legal spin on the contract. But on this episode of Monday Morning Meeting, I appreciate you joining us. And Sam, be safe in your travels, and I'll see you next week.
You too. Bye.